Lesson 1. Mastering Historical Sources. Welcome to our course on MATSEC SEC History Fundamentals. To succeed in history, you first need to know how to handle sources. Historians divide evidence into two main types, primary and secondary sources. Primary sources are produced at or near the time of the events by eyewitnesses or participants. For instance, a letter from a Maltese merchant written in 1798 about the French occupation is a primary source. Secondary sources, on the other hand, are later accounts that interpret or synthesize primary evidence, such as a modern textbook chapter explaining the causes of the French Revolution. But simply having a source is not enough. You must assess its bias and reliability. You need to ask how the author's position, purpose, and omissions shape the evidence. If a newspaper strongly favors one political party and ignores opposing views, that bias affects how much you can trust it for a balanced picture. You also have to distinguish fact from opinion. Facts can be checked against evidence, like stating that the Bastille fell in July 1789. Opinions and judgments express values that cannot be proven by a single record, like claiming a revolution was entirely justified. Finally, historians often deal with conflicting sources. When two sources disagree, for example about why the Maltese revolted against the French, you should not just discard one. A careful student will compare authorship, purpose, and context, and critically cross-check both against other evidence.
Lesson 2. The Renaissance and Reformation. Now, let us explore a major turning point in European history, the Renaissance and the Reformation. The Italian Renaissance began in city-states like Florence, Rome, and Venice. A unique combination of wealthy merchant and banking patronage, urban competition, surviving classical remains, and Mediterranean trading contacts fostered an incredible explosion of art and learning. This period is famous for prominent Italian Renaissance artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael, whose works define the High Renaissance. Their artistic and intellectual features included perspective painting, a deep interest in the human form, portraiture, and a classical revival. While art still treated religious themes, it did so with completely new naturalistic techniques. At the same time, the printing press emerged as a revolutionary invention. It enabled the mass production of books and pamphlets, meaning humanist texts could spread across Europe far more quickly than traditional manuscript copying allowed. This rapid spread of ideas set the stage for the Protestant Reformation. On the eve of this religious upheaval, a major grievance was the Catholic Church's sale of indulgences, which was the practice of selling spiritual remission of temporal punishment for sins. Martin Luther famously protested this and other practices in Germany. His challenge, including his 95 Theses, sparked the Protestant Reformation, which ultimately fragmented Western Christendom and caused deep religious division across Europe.
Lesson 3. The French Revolution and Napoleon. In this lesson, we examine the massive political upheaval of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic era. On the eve of 1789, France was structured under the Ancien Regime. This system was highly unequal, burdening the Third Estate, while the First and Second Estates enjoyed immense privileges. Combined with royal debt and a severe fiscal crisis, this inequality became the core long-term cause of the revolution. A major turning point occurred on the 14th of July, 1789, with the storming of the Bastille. This event is incredibly significant because it served as a symbolic popular assault on royal authority and became a defining revolutionary landmark that accelerated revolutionary politics in Paris. Out of this turbulent period rose Napoleon Bonaparte. His path to absolute power followed a distinct sequence. He first seized control in the 1799 coup d'état, becoming first consul. He later declared himself consul for life, and finally crowned himself emperor in 1804. However, his empire was eventually brought down. Napoleon's downfall was driven by imperial overextension, the disastrous 1812 Russian campaign, rising nationalist resistance, and a coalition of nations that finally defeated him. After Napoleon's defeat, leading statesmen met at the Congress of Vienna between 1814 and 1815. Their main goal was to restore stability across the continent by redrawing the map of Europe based on principles of political legitimacy and a balance of power, hoping to prevent any future French hegemony or revolutionary upheaval. Lesson 4: Unification Movements and the Cold War. We conclude our historical fundamentals by looking at how modern states were forged and later divided. In the 19th century, both Italy and Germany underwent major unification movements. A key similarity between Italian and German unification was that both relied on strong state leadership, powerful nationalist ideology, and military conflicts, including wars against Austria. For Italy, this was led by Cavour and Piedmont, while Germany was unified under Bismarck and Prussian leadership. Fast forward to the aftermath of the Second World War, and we see Europe divided once again, this time by the Cold War. After 1945, Europe split into Western capitalist democracies, which were largely aligned with the United States, and a Soviet-dominated communist Eastern Bloc. One of the earliest major crises of this era was the Berlin blockade of 1948 to 1949. This occurred when the Soviet Union cut off land access to West Berlin, prompting the West to organize a massive airlift to supply the city. Tensions were not limited to Europe. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the two superpowers to the absolute brink of nuclear war over the placement of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, serving as a terrifying example of superpower brinkmanship. The Cold War system remained entrenched until Mikhail Gorbachev introduced policies of glasnost, meaning openness, and perestroika, or restructuring. These reforms aimed to restructure the USSR, but unintentionally helped destabilize communist control and contributed to the end of the Cold War.
Thanks for watching. For free practice questions, study guides, and flashcards, visit exampreprise.com. Good luck on your exam!